Oh, they're leaving when they're married. Is that what you guys said? Yeah. Okay, so she's gonna be.
Good morning. We begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional lands of the Songhees and Esquimalt people, these lands on which we gather to worship. And we welcome you to this time of worship with us. No matter who you are, no matter where your life has taken you in the past or where it may lead you in the future, know that you are always welcome here, and we give thanks that you have joined us this day. We have several announcements that we're going to try and move through at a reasonable pace this morning. The first is that the theological banquet is coming up in a couple of weeks. There's a notice in your bulletin. It's an excellent, excellent program where we will be looking at the different theologies of this congregation, and actually we've opened it up to the whole presbytery, so we will hear lots of different voices of the theologies of the United Church of Canada. And it helps us to reflect on what are the shadow sides of some of those theologies, and how can having multiple theologies in a community of faith be of benefit to us so that the shadow side doesn't take over on any one of them. It will be a workshop that will inform us a lot as we move forward to determine who we are and what we want to be doing as a community of faith in the future. So I encourage you to come, and I encourage you to sign up. We will be serving lunch, so we need to know how many people are there, and you can sign up online. If you look at our website, there's a link to sign up, or you can simply call in to Sharon in the office, and she will sign you up for that.
Just to let you know, today is the last day you can get tickets for the Friendship Tea. We're having the Friendship Tea at 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and it's so you can meet and socialize with your church family. The tickets are $5, and they'll be available in the fellowship hall after. After today, you won't be able to get tickets. We need to do a little planning.
Good morning. I forgot to put this really important announcement in the bulletin, so please make note of it. Next Sunday is Thanksgiving, and we usually have a display of food here, and you are welcome to bring food items, perishable and non-perishable, to be part of that at the service next Sunday. And after church, someone from our place will be coming to collect them. So please make a note of that. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kyla, and I'm the Health and Wellness Advocate at First Met. Just putting in a final plug for our new restorative yoga class that we'll be offering this fall. It starts on Thursday, October 5th, and it costs $75. That's for 8-hour-and-a-half classes. You just need to contact Sharon or myself through the office to register. And this is a study of deep relaxation. This kind of yoga is ideal for stress reduction, for people that have injuries or chronic pain, or for anyone who's interested in a deeply restorative yoga practice. No previous yoga experience is required. If finances are an issue, it's possible to access the Health and Wellness Education Bursary Fund. So it's as simple as just sending me a confidential email to express your interest in the program, and we will find a way to make it accessible to you. Okay, thank you.
Next Sunday, we will be blessing the pets. If you have a young person or you yourself would like to have your pet blessed, would you please send to me an electronic copy of your pet's picture? My email is in the bulletin. It's Arlie Alexander. And yes, we'll be electronically blessing the pets next week.
I wanted to remind the congregation about the Common Vision event at Gordon United Church in Langford tonight at 7 o'clock. This is a wonderful music event, but it's also an opportunity to support the Canadian Food Grains Bank. As I mentioned once before, any donations that are made are matched 4-to-1, sometimes 5-to-1. And you're not going to get that on any investment that I know other than this. So please join us at Gordon United, 935 Goldstream Avenue at 7 o'clock tonight.
I'd like to introduce Ross Brecken, who is the co-chair of our property redevelopment team, and he wants to just offer a bit of an update. This won't be a time for question and answer, although Ross has promised me that he is available after the service for anyone who wants to ask questions. And of course, any time in the coming weeks that you have questions for the property redevelopment team. Ross, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Ivy. First, I'd like to acknowledge the team members on the task group. They've worked very hard since 2012. We have Paul Jenkins as the co-chair. We have Catherine Cook. We have Lyndon Holman. We have David Bray. We have Stephen Gray. We have Mike McCauley from Oak Bay United Church, who is sitting on our group as a representative of Presbytery to help guide us. We also have staff support from Cullen Morton and Ivy. So I have a question for you before I give you the update. I just want to know how many people here received an email or saw the bulletin where we gave a little update. It would have been a few weeks ago where we talked about the work that we're doing. Well, that's quite a few. That's great. I'm glad to see that. So I'm just going to try and elaborate on that a little bit. Just going back to the beginning of the year when we discussed our project and our efforts with BC Conference. And we asked them, is there anything that BC Conference can do to help First Met on this journey? We had reached a kind of critical milestone in the project. ICA had decided that they weren't able to take on the fellowship hall, and we were getting ready to issue a request for proposals to various developers for ideas and suggestions about how we could develop our site to the benefit of the congregation and the community. BC Conference, as you may know, is involved with many other churches in the province in helping them with their redevelopment initiatives. They formed a group called the Property Resource Team in 2012, and since then they've helped many congregations move their redevelopment initiatives forward. In fact, they're currently involved with over 7 different congregations in the province on similar kinds of initiatives. That is, looking at how we can take our property assets to help sustain our ministries over the long term. And so they suggested to us, or actually they proposed to us, that they could come in and do a feasibility study for us. They work very closely with Colliers International, which is a professional property development firm, and they would agree to do a feasibility study and pay for it. So we said, okay, that's a good idea. You've got a lot of experience in doing this with other churches in BC. Why don't you take a look at what we've done so far and give us some ideas on how we might go forward. And they did that. This summer, they spent quite a bit of time, Colliers International did, looking at all of the work that we had done before, right back to the Stantec report, if you remember, the City Spaces functional programming report, the GVHS proposal that we decided not to go ahead with, and even the ICA study of the fellowship hall. They also looked at all of the housing needs in Victoria. They looked at the official community plan for Victoria. They talked to the Victoria Planning Department. They did a whole lot of analysis around what's going on in this community. This is something that they do as a matter of course. It's one of their areas of expertise. And they came back with a feasibility report. They looked at a number of options for the church, from simply just selling the property and finding a new home to doing something with the fellowship hall site. And they produced the feasibility report that we received at the end of August, and since the end of August we have been looking at that feasibility report. The RTG has been looking at that feasibility report, and we have identified lots and lots of questions that we have about what they have recommended. They recommended one option, and there was a high-level description of that option in the email that we sent out and in the bulletin. They decided or figured that the highest and best use for the fellowship hall site would be some kind of residential complex built on that site because of the housing needs in BC. And the option that to them was most attractive was an affordable housing residential complex. And they but that option looked at a 6-story residential complex where the fellowship hall. And the other aspect of that option that they recommended was to leverage that development project to take care of the refurbishment and upgrading needs of the heritage building and the Christian education wing. So use that development project as an opportunity to seismically upgrade the church, to do refurbishment, reprogramming of the space in the church and in the Christian education wing. And they said that is the option that's most economically viable. So just to take it down a little bit, the 6-story residential, affordable housing residential complex would be owned and operated by BC Conference in this option. And BC Conference is in the process of setting up a separate not-for-profit housing society because they're doing this kind of project. BC Conference is doing this kind of project with other congregations. The income from the housing complex would pay for the development of that building and also generate a revenue stream for the congregation that is actually hosting it. And in our case, we would get a revenue stream out of that as well. And that's ongoing as long as that housing complex is operated. The advantages to that are that the United Church of Canada, BC Conference, we continue to own the site. We're not actually selling the site to a private developer. We're giving it or selling it to the United Church of Canada. And in return for that, we get our share of the proceeds out of the operation of that residential complex. And also within the scope of that project, money is allocated to doing the necessary renovations in the Heritage Building and the Christian Education Wing to ensure that they continue to support the congregation on an ongoing basis. So at this point, it's a concept. It's not a proposal. The redevelopment task group is plowing through that report. We've just finished that. We've got 8 pages of questions and comments and discussion items that we're going to take back to the property resource team. We're going to meet with them in the next month or so, get answers to that. And then when we have a better understanding of what the project is, what its impact would be on our congregation, we'll bring it back to council and the congregation for further clarification and discussion. And at some point, we will have, as a group, have to decide whether or not we want to go forward with this project. A project like this is a multi-year project. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. There's a lot of further analysis that would need to be done once we say we want to go ahead. We certainly have to go back and validate all of the assumptions that have been used in the various analysis that was done. We have to go through a whole permitting process and all of that. So it takes many years to execute. So what we hope to do is this fall get back to the congregation with a clearer understanding of the scope of the project, how it would impact the congregation, and then we have a process internally where the congregation decides yay or nay on that particular option. So I'm available after the service today to answer any specific questions or more specific questions that you might have. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross, and thank you for all of your ongoing work on this project. Some of you will remember Reverend David Lovewell and his wife Pat, who served at First United in the late 80s. Pat passed away this past week, and her service will be on Friday at 2 p.m. at St. Aidan's United Church. So we light a candle today in memory of Pat and hold their family and friends in prayer. And now let's take a moment to prepare our hearts and minds for our continuing worship. We will now light the Christ candle. Well, it may not come up. We'll light it anyway. There it is. And Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." We continue to hold this candlelight so that we might remember that we are called to be the light of the world. Eileen, what are you doing?
I'm looking for treasures.
You're looking for treasures?
Yes.
Okay, continue on.
Do you know what a treasure is? How would you describe it? In the Bible, there are references to you and I not storing up our treasures while on earth. Treasures is one of the T words of whole life stewardship, which you will be hearing more about when you attend our event, Stewardship Buddies, on November the 4th, here in the sanctuary. You will be able to register for this event very soon. We will be having Jane Harding, the financial officer for BC Conference, as our guest speaker. Today, we launch our 2018 Pledge Card campaign. You will see a special bulletin insert giving you some information which you may find helpful to consider when filling out your pledge card. Because of the anticipated additional expenses involved with calling a new minister, I challenge you to raise your pledge a little for 2018. Since we don't know if our new minister will be called from BC or from the East Coast, we have to be prepared for all possibilities. I encourage you to fill out your pledge card as soon as possible, and I will be advising you how we are doing throughout the month. To those of you who have already filled out your pledge cards and turned them in, I say a sincere thank you. Our bulletin board for stewardship is finally ready, and I do hope you will take the time to read the information on it. It is located just outside this entrance to the sanctuary. Thank you.
And this morning, for something just a little bit different, our invitation to worship will be sung.
3 times. Three times.
Will be sung 3 times. There we go.
Give us outrageous faith, God, the kind who moves mountains and makes a difference in our neighbors, here and across the globe. May our worship and our offering be courageous, bring us face to face with the words we need. Use our faith, Lord, to heal and to bring hope. May our actions be a witness to your life, and us to serve in your name. Amen.
So morning, everybody. It's so good to see you. Spirit Day. Okay. Spirit Day. Okay. What do we have here? Can everybody see what we have here? Bread. How many people here like bread? Do you guys like bread? Hi, guys. Who likes bread? I'm going to have to, yeah, hang on. I'm going to hang on to the toys for you for a sec. Hey, 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 hey. Look at the bread. What do you say? Can you see the bread? How many people like bread? What are some of the things you put on your bread? Jam. Butter. Peanut butter. Marmalade. More butter. Peanut butter. Yum. Well, does anybody know why we have all of this bread here? Any idea? Sorry? Because people like bread? Yeah, people like bread. So I'm just going to tell us about this bread in particular.
So we have... I didn't tell you that. Thank you. So we have different kinds of bread here. We have French bread from France, and we have, what's this called? No, it's not pita bread. It's from India. It's naan bread. Thank you. My brain went dead there. And we have pumpernickel from Germany. And this flat bread here has Greek olives in it. So I'm pretty sure that it represents Greece, like pizza, yeah. And we have tortilla shells. Who uses tortilla shells? What country? Mexico, yes. And we have flatbread. Who has flatbread? Look, it looks like a cracker, doesn't it? But it's flatbread from Israel. All kinds of bread. And then who knows what this kind of bread is? That's normal bread. That's normal, delicious bread, right? Right? Well, we have all this different bread today because today is World Communion Sunday. That means that people all over the world are coming and having communion in their churches today. So we can imagine that when we come up for communion, it's not just us, but it's people all over the world. It's like having a really, really big family banquet. And it's a very special day because we can remember that God gifted us with this meal so that we could remember Jesus. And it's not just us, but it's for people all over the world, everywhere. So we say thank you, God, for bread and for juice and for Jesus and for loving us. Amen. So we're going to go right into communion, but I suggest that you go back with your families and then watch the screen, because when we do communion, we're going to have pictures up there that kind of tell the story of communion in pictures as well as words. Okay? Thank you. Here we go. So we invite you to communion, to this table of grace and remembering. It is not the table of the United Church. It is not the table of mine. It's not the table of First Metropolitan, but it is Christ's table, a table where all are welcome. Know that you too are welcome at this table. May the peace of Christ be with you.
We give thanks for the earth.
Water and soil. Thank you. Next slide. we give thanks for creation, for creatures that fly and creep, slither, run, and swim. Thank you.
We give thanks for people who have taught us about the Holy One.
For prophets and saints, parents, grandparents, and teachers. Thank you. We give thanks for Jesus and his living. He showed us a way of being kind and compassionate to all people, seeing everyone as equal. Thank you.
In our stories about Jesus, we hear that he often ate with people of all kinds, rich and poor, popular and unpopular, friendly and grumpy. It is good for us to remember this and to celebrate together with a communion meal.
This is a meal that remembers Jesus' last meal with his friends and his followers. On that night before he died, Jesus told his friends how much he loved them. They ate and drank and laughed together. Then Jesus took a loaf of bread. He gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to his friends, saying, "Together we eat this bread, that it might fill us with God's love. Each time you eat this, remember me."
After everyone had finished eating, Jesus poured out a cup of grape nectar. He gave thanks, shared it with his friends, saying, "This cup offers a new promise that the Holy One is making with all people of all times and places. Each time you drink it, remember me."
And I invite you to join me in blessing this meal as we raise our hands toward the table. Living Spirit, bless this bread and this juice, that it might nourish and sustain us to be faithful followers of the way. Bless also those who long for this table of grace and community, but do not know where to find it. May this opportunity for us to eat make it possible for us to be the grace and community that they are longing for. Amen.
These are the gifts of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. Sorry, I just want to give some instruction first. So just to remember that as we serve communion, you will come up the middle aisle and go back the side aisles, and there will be a station for gluten-free just over to my right. Thanks, Kelly. Come, for the feast is ready. It is but a nibble of bread and a few drops of grape nectar. Hardly enough by today's standards. Hardly a feast. And yet, somehow, through the grace of God, it is more than enough to sustain us until we gather again at this table. And for this, we offer our prayer of gratitude. Thank you for this meal of love. May it remind us to carry your love in our hearts and share your love with everyone, today and always. Amen. And I invite the children to head off to Sunday school.
Scripture today is from the book of Genesis, chapter 12, beginning of verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarah and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired, and they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name. And Abram journeyed on by stages toward the neighbourhood. This is part of our story.
We hear a lot about Abraham. Our Bible is filled with stories about Abraham. We don't hear so much about Sarah. Do you ever wonder what Sarah was thinking about when Abraham came to her and said, "We're going to be traveling, we're going to be moving, pack up your goods"? Well, perhaps this will get a bit of an indication as to what Sarah might have been thinking. Dear Diary, you're not going to believe this one. Nobody even asked me. This morning, Abe comes flying through the door and just tells me to start packing. "We're moving from here," he says. Moving? What do you mean moving? Why? And you know what he said to me? He said, "God spoke to me and told me to leave Haran and go to a land that will be shown to us." "What land?" I asked him. "I don't know," he said sheepishly. don't know. What do you mean you don't know, I asked. Is it a day's journey from here? A week? A month? How far? And what direction? Don't you know anything? He just stood there shaking his head. Let me get this straight, I said to him. Even though we are nicely settled here, we are comfortable here, our friends and family and land is here, and it's all more than sufficient for our needs, you want us to pack everything and go someplace else. But you have no idea where that place is. My beloved Sarai, he said, trying to flatter me into compliance. I know it sounds crazy, but it's not for me, it's God. Yahweh has asked this of me, of us. Please try to understand, he said. We can stay here where we are comfortable and safe and we know what to expect every day, but the only people who benefit from that is us. And what's wrong with being comfortable and safe and caring just for ourselves, I asked him. Why do we need to leave all of this for a future and a place that is completely unknown and uncertain? I reminded him of our age. We are too old to be starting off on such an adventure. Leave that to the next generation. Let them go exploring. I'm quite comfortable right where I am. There's no need to change anything. God says we will be blessed if we go, but I think we're pretty darn blessed right where we are, doing just what we're doing. Get this. Here's what he said to that. God has offered to lead us to a new land, not just so we would be blessed, but so that we would be blessed to be a blessing to others. I don't think this is about us, Sarai. That's what he said. I don't think this is about us, Sarai. You darn right it's about us. It's our lives that are being uprooted and put at risk. If Yahweh wants us to be a blessing to others, why can't we do that right here, doing just what we're doing? Why does anything have to change? What about how we share our harvest with our neighbors? Isn't that being a blessing? Isn't that enough? It's sure a lot easier. But then Abram said something that has made me stop and think. He said, "My dear Sarai, I have thought the same things as you. I have questioned and challenged God on all of these issues. What I've come to understand is that this is a journey of faith. God is calling us to leave our comfortable lives and the security of all that we know, because that is what will prevent us from embracing all the possibilities of the future. Staying with what we know will stop us from going with God to the place of what could be. As long as we stay where we are," he said, "doing what we are doing, nothing will ever change. We will live and die here in Haran. But if we leave, if we take the journey of faith and trust deeply in the calling Yahweh has placed on my heart, only then can we bring newness and blessings into the world. We have to be willing to risk, to let go of what we know, trusting that the something new will bring far more abundant blessings than we could ever ask or imagine." He is a wise and faith-filled man, my Abram. As I think about it, I am beginning to understand that we are being called to more than just self-preservation. We are being called to a journey of deep faith and unwavering trust. We are being called to let go of old commitments and burdens, old ways of being, so that we can be free to journey into new territories, new promises, new hopes, and maybe new lives. And so I guess, Like my Abram, I too am now willing to leave behind many of the things that bring me comfort and security. I'm willing to risk everything for the sake of something new, something bigger than me, bigger than Abram, bigger even than the comfortable place in which we have settled. After all, as long as we stay in Haran, life will go on as usual, and we will never get around to fulfilling our call to be a blessing to the world. As long as we are in Haran, we will never begin the journey of faith that leads to new possibilities. Choosing to remain where we are would be to choose a dead end, rather than embracing the miracle of God's promise. I'm afraid that my desire for stability over change would cost us our future. Because the future is not in Haran. The future is in the willingness to strike out on this new journey, to do new things that may make us uncomfortable, but that we do for the sake of the promise. It is the willingness to grasp a future that we don't even understand, but for which we are willing to take risks. Indeed, it is a risk, what we are about to do. But that's part of the journey of faith. If we stay with what's safe, if we choose to stay in Haran, we will never realize our calling. We will never know what was possible unless we dare to risk. Dear diary, thanks for listening. Holy One, release our grip on the familiar, the safe, the comfortable, so that we might follow you into an unknown future where we may be blessed to be a blessing to others. Amen. We take time now to receive this morning's offerings, signs of our whole lives returned to the one who gifted us. right into another song. Caught everybody off guard. As we go from here, go as people of faith, blessed to be a blessing to others. Go in hope, go in peace, go in joy. Amen.